Indonesian startup and venture capital has gone through a lot of bad publicities lately. Yeah. So what is really going on? Is it really the founders' fault, or should be investors taking responsible?
I think VC is 100% gambling. I think in the last few years it's been gambling. Yeah.
So being a unicorn right now is not important.
I don't think it's possible in Indonesia with any kind of seriousness. I saw a substantial amount of just copying US ideas, cut and paste. And was the decisions being made based on the ability of these people, or was it made on the ability on their friendship?
So in this, in our ecosystem, in VC words, do you think it should be more regulations or more punishment, or what need to be done in Indonesia particularly? Hello everyone. Indonesian startup and venture capital has gone through a lot of bad publicities lately. Yeah. So what is really going on? Is it really the founders' fault, or should be investors taking responsible? Our discussion today is not to find who's to blame, but we are going to have a healthy discussion about what should we do next and how should we prevent to reoccur in the future. Everyone, welcome to Coffee and Capital. Our guest for today is the founder and CEO of a growing technology company specializing in location analysis, helping other businesses to build strategy and also to make decisions based on geolocation data and information. However, most people know him as the most outspoken person when it comes to the VC and startups world. His LinkedIn posts have been liked, disliked, reshared by thousands of people, including myself. Please welcome the one and only Pak Martyn Terpilowski, CEO of Bivarta. Welcome.
Thanks so much. Thanks for that fantastic introduction. I never thought actually I'd be sat doing a podcast in a BUMN nice, VC office. Yeah, that was like, well, the last thing I thought what I would be invited to. But,
right.
You never know.
Yes. Thank you for coming, Martyn. So thank you for accepting our invitation. So people know you as the critics of the VC and startup world, but I don't think many people noticed that many years ago you were on the other side, right? So you were working for an investment company. Is that true? So
I was, but kind of different.
Right.
Listed securities, some private, but mainly the hedge fund business and like Japanese equities, things like that. So quite a big difference. Okay. And I think that's probably what gave me the grounding when I came here. I'd never been exposed to venture capital investment before, and I just didn't understand a lot of what was going on early doors. And I do talk to a lot of people in the big finance in other countries. And we discussed it between us and we just didn't understand. So I think that was where I got into a few discussions with people, and people said, you don't understand Indonesia, you don't understand this. And that's where it came about. But yeah, I mean, my background was nearly 20 years in Asia doing finance, Tokyo and Hong Kong. So I spent 12 years in Tokyo. I spent 5.5 years in Hong Kong. In my last job, I was running a $2.3 billion family office business. That was very stressful as well. I got out of that because of some of the things what I've been asked to do. Previous to that, I was just a sales guy to these people, covering family offices. And that's how I made a few connections here already, actually. So yeah, I mean, I'm not negative towards investment. I just know that, you can't just do anything on sentiment. And there's got to be a results. And I was finding that people were just, if you talk about it enough, it's going to happen. And I don't think that's the case.
So what brought you, what make you decide to, all right, let's make a company. What company? Geographical Information System company. So what?
Right. So
how that
on this one, I will come to a bit of a disclaimer.
Right.
So I had no prior knowledge of geospatial software.
Right.
Years ago, I came to Jakarta to meet a few people that I know from the past to discuss various business opportunities. One of them being a member of a well-known family here, one of them really well-known. And he basically, at the time, Indonesia was looking at One Map Indonesia. Yeah, they were looking at technology sovereignty. And basically it was suggested to me that, if you want to get involved, because I'd actually just started up my own boutique investment company in Singapore. Yeah. The idea was I would invest, as an angel in multiple investments. Okay. But I did that a few times and lost the money. So I realized it wasn't going to work. And then I walked into met this guy, and we had a coffee. And we'd had a discussion with a couple of other people and got some advice from guys who were pretty well known here. And they were saying, Indonesia's crying out for deep tech. Indonesia's crying out for this. And I went back to Bali after I left Hong Kong, because when I left my job, my apartment went as well, and it's very expensive, especially where I was living. So went to Bali to think about it. And then, I thought, well, at least if I'm investing here, I've got strong partners to invest with. So that's how the idea came about. Kind of a strange one, but that's how the concept actually, started. And actually, I just talked to Nia before. Nia was like, how did you get into location intelligence? Actually, I remember talking to, it used to be a guy called Kusmianto Kadiman. Oh, okay. So KK, right? He was also one of the people I met when I came here. And I discussed with him what the potential was in Indonesia. I have no idea. When you start talking about, Indonesia's got lots of data, but it's all over the place. Indonesia is logistically challenged. So I said, if I can solve them problems, do you think there's a market? And he said, of course. And I'm still in contact with him now, actually. And I think he's probably surprised how long it's gone on. So I asked a few people who were in business, and my ex-partner as well, and people can find out who that was another way. But basically, that's how it came about, and it just seemed I just use logic, right? I just think it made sense, right? But it wasn't easy, but I just thought it made sense.
Yeah. So, you mentioned that you discover this idea to making a GIS company, and then see what is going right now. It's quite incredible to see the growth, right? So, but you frequently made a statement that startup and VC world are broken, right? Yeah. So let's discuss this one at a time. At this first part, I would like to go deeper more on the startup side, right? So wasn't it great to see so many innovations, so many ideas, and bring a lot of young people to inspire other people to have their own business, just like you did. So what's wrong then with what you see now? It's not what I mean by having.
I think the problem became every single person who came back from a US university wanted to be a VC or a founder, right? And it's like, everybody wants to be a footballer, but not everybody can be a footballer. Okay, and that's what I saw. I just saw everybody jumping in on it. Whether and Cristiano Ronaldo, these guys. David Beckham's an example. He's a great footballer. Right. His son wasn't good enough to make it. Yes. And it became the idea that everyone's just going to do this. They've got an MBA and they're just going to do this, right? So when you talk about innovation, I saw a substantial amount of just copying US ideas, cut and paste. And listen, my idea is not unique to Indonesia, but I just thought like everyone else was doing it, so everybody jumped at it, right? So it just seemed there was a lack of innovation. And again, in my opinion, from the people I know in the business, this was not across society. It was, if you look around who the founders are, who the startups are, a substantial number of them are what you would call from the elites, from the high end of society. So the money tended to flow to between a group of friends. Yeah. So was the decisions being made based on the ability of these people, or was it made on the ability on their friendship? So it seemed like a boys' network to me. Now, of course, I think it's a great idea if you're encouraging people and people are learning. But when probably the reasons I have a lot of support on my social media is a lot of people feel excluded. Okay. A lot of people don't feel that they have any opportunity because they see the people who have all this money raised, whether their idea is winning or not, they keep raising more money. And then you find out how they're raising through, So we know it's a boys' network. Everybody's connected. The names are the same. The people are the same. So I think it's great to have innovation. I think it's great to have multiple people striving to achieve. But when the best people are not the people, the best people should get to the top. And when you cut out meritocracy and you just have a group of people buying and sell 3 times founder, which basically means you've sold out your shares of your failed business 3 times. I mean, that's not something I can get on board with, and it's very clear. And I mean, I've been approached by some of these guys to be LPs in their business, in their funds. And I'm like, what did you do before? Oh, I'm friends with him. That's not going to qualify you. And if, at the end of the day, most of the guys running VCs here were connectors. Okay. They had no financial background. But
it's not their fault they're being born rich, right?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. But the problem was that won't... The reason I could see there being a lot, no, absolutely not. And people think I have this thing. It doesn't. I'm friends with a lot of these people actually, and I tell them it doesn't matter that. But what matters is you're cutting out a lot of people and a lot of innovation which could work. And a lot of these guys, some of them really want to build a business and be generational. But we know most don't, because most sell the shares to investors on the way up. That is not a way. If I started selling my secondary market shares to my partners would go nuts. But it's been the case here time and time again. So no, I just think it needs to be a more inclusive market. This idea that, there's been loads of innovation is, I'll give you an example. If you look at Swire Group, for example, their kids don't run their family office. The kids don't run the money. The kids are juniors in other companies until they get to a certain level. That's why you don't see these guys losing crazy money. So, and it's not even just family members. It's even in due respect, BUMN, hiring people who don't have a massively great track record. If you want to get that kind of job in Hong Kong or Singapore, you've got to have a track record. Doesn't matter who you know. So being born with anything is not the issue. But it's like being David Beckham's son is not the issue. Nobody doesn't like David Beckham's son, but David Beckham's son's not good enough to play for Manchester United. Yeah. And I think that's the issue. The issue is we can do this because we've got a group of mates and we'll all go to Bali together and slap each other on the back and we're the best. I've been to these parties, because I'm friends with some of the parents, so that's what's kind of confusing. And the parents, some of them kind of agree with me. It's not about that. I think the problem is it was the intention was to get in and get out. The intention was not to build generational businesses.
So lately, I visited some universities.
Yep.
A lot of interesting innovation happening.
Absolutely.
And the idea is, you mentioned earlier that most of the rich family just want to get in and get out. But there are some group of real innovators, if I may say that, who still struggling finding their financing. Right? Of course. Do you think they should meet each other, or it's not going to happen?
This is the thing, as you said, there's loads of innovation in Indonesia, but these people have no access to capital. Because as you discussed, and I've never took VC funding and looked like I didn't need it. Yeah. But when I've met the VCs, when they want ludicrous results. You can't, if you're a deep tech company with real innovation, the idea of 10x, 20x in a couple of years isn't possible. So it's all make believe. It's only possible if you're paying for revenue. We've all heard the story how somebody blows $90 million in a year and ends up with nothing. B2C is usually not innovation. It's B2C and B2 MSME. All this talk of what's it called? Financial inclusion and democratization. All you're doing is selling to the bottom of the pyramid. Now the reality is the bottom of the pyramid in Indonesia is too big to ever make a proper profitable unicorn. I really believe that. Most of the startups here, because they benefit from their relationships, they don't even try to open overseas. They've got no attempt to open overseas because they don't have the people caring what their second name there, or they don't have the power there. You know what I mean? So I don't believe most of the investment in Indonesia has gone into B2C, B2 MSME. They haven't got into real innovation, because real innovation takes too long. It takes too long to get. Like I've been doing this for 7 years. I'm not a unicorn and I'm not one anywhere near. And that's what they want. They want to be able to say, we're a unicorn. We're this, we're that, right? And the reality is I don't believe in the B2C market in Indonesia at the moment. In any of these businesses, you're ever going to get a proper unicorn that can be profitable. So yeah, I think there's real innovation, and that's why we'll come on to it later, but I think the VCs need to understand if you're going to back companies like that, it takes time. I backed this business, it took time. But I never expected to be making $100 million revenue by now. I don't think it's feasible. I'm opening in Japan because I will double my revenue hopefully next year in Japan because it's a much bigger market for B2B. People are obsessed by the size of the population here. it's not relevant to making a profitable business.
So does that mean every founders need to take it the hard way?
It depends. I mean, I'm sure there's some great founders. I know some, but the problem is I think everyone was encouraged to do it. So I don't know whose fault it is. It became a thing when everyone was, I always said on my LinkedIn, these guys are drinking the Kool-Aid. I was offered into the IPOs, early stage IPOs of many of these companies. Having worked in finance for many years, I told everybody, down, 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 down. No international investors are going to buy the IPO long term because it doesn't make sense. It's all basically in Indonesia, everything's promo driven. So if you're just going to focus on financial inclusion, and if you're going to focus on the bottom of the pyramid and everything, you're going to struggle. You know, I think the question is when it comes to all these fintech, and I've said this to certain people who are not with us anymore, and basically the problem is with these things, people got to understand the richest person in this country has made a lot of money, or one of the richest people in this country, in banking. And I'm telling you now, if he thought these things were going to make a load of money, he'd have done them himself. But everybody jumped on the bandwagon. It's all about the number of people, financial inclusion, lend them money. Peer-to-peer lending doesn't work in Europe. You never get the money back. But everybody jumped on the Kool-Aid here thinking this is the best idea ever. We just lend money. It wasn't even VC. Again, not naming names, but some of these big VCs, and particularly BUMN ones, their business was predominantly lending money to people who couldn't pay them back. It's not really tech. It was lending money. So I'm not saying that all VC has to be tech, but most of the startups in Indonesia now, they're doing any good, are nothing to do with tech. They're claiming they are tech, what's it called? I mean, tech-enabled coffee, whatever, but they're claiming they're tech, but they're real estate plays, they are F&B plays. So I don't know many innovative startups in Indonesia at all that are, there's not many. Most of the fundraising and the efforts from the founders as well, because let's face it, these founders who are part of this MBA crowd, they know innovation won't raise money because it's their friends, right? So they know that getting a big market, a B2C market, when you can talk 280 million people, when you can talk 50 million MSMEs, when you can talk about all these people who don't have bank accounts. I mean, the thing is, a lot of people don't want bank accounts. They don't pay tax. I don't think when people are sat, in Paco Bono or Senean, they don't realize a lot of small businesses don't want QR codes because they don't want to pay tax. They don't want everything off grid. They want cash. So there's so many things that have, and that's not just here, by the way. That's in other countries. Hong Kong and stuff, often they want cash so they don't have to pay tax. So I think a lot of ideas have been forced upon people. The middle class might love it here with my QR code, but I don't think they're going to love it in a lot of companies why would they want to make this taxable? So there's so many things I think have not been thought out when it's been it's just the population's huge, let's get a part of it. Whether it's lending them money, whether it's all these MSMEs. The MSME tech was absolutely ridiculous. I'll tell you what happened. They just went around paying people to download the apps and called it number of users. And the next day, someone would go around and pay them to get rid of that one and download that one. And this is how they got there. I mean, it wasn't a real business. It was all about getting the valuation up. So I don't call that innovation.
Is it bad for now? Or do you think probably 10 years down the road, people in very remote areas start using it?
I tell you now, if you want a garage built in the north of England, they give you a discount for cash because they don't want to pay tax. So Hong Kong and Japan as well, many restaurants will still only take cash because they don't want to pay full tax. So I don't know. But anyway, even if everybody uses it, what's the margins on somebody paying for something? What's the margins? What's the profitability on that kind of business?
Well, the funny thing is, I always criticize when I see a slide presentation, especially in a slide of TAM, SAM, SOM, something market sizing stuff, right? But interestingly, when I talk to some of my colleagues who teaches entrepreneurship, whether you should teach entrepreneurship or not, but the entrepreneurship curriculum still teaching that, market sizing, how to pitch the idea.
I think I know what you're talking about. But the problem is, VC guys are teaching entrepreneurship. I mean, again, it's I couldn't teach entrepreneurship because I'm a financier. I'm not an entrepreneur. I mean, I have people who work for me who are smart. But I've never understood that, and especially in a market like Indonesia, as I always say, the bottom of the pyramid is too big. You've got to at least have plan to go overseas. But the problem is people don't build a moat. They don't build a moat because they think it doesn't matter. I've got the connections here and the population is big enough here. So I think that's what's held it back. Look at Vietnam. Vietnam has VinFast, and again, it comes back to how that happened. He's a self-made man. His story was he went to the university in the Ukraine, sold a noodle company to Nestle, moved back, and now he's got a global company. There's no EVs here. People have been talking about funding EVs for years. What's happened? But again, I know some people who are actually engineers and they can't raise capital. But then you look at who's raised all the EV money, it's just, again, a group of friends, right? So what makes them think that they're going to do it? I don't understand. Even the businesses that have gone to unicorn, none of them are particularly successful. It's just because they managed to raise a load of money. And they raised a load of money through multiple sources, connections and stuff. But yeah, I think the metrics is insane. And I remember a couple of conversations with well-known people here. When I first came, I was introduced to some by my partners, and first thing I asked them was what the background is, and I was quite stunned that they had no real experience. And then very few had international experience in doing anything apart from the university. And then basically, it was like about, if I give you 5 million today, you won't need 50 million next year. So that's no use to me. I'm trying to work this out from a 20-year financial background, working in some of the biggest markets in the world, and it just didn't compute. And then I knew it was, and then I had disagreements with people, and people refused to enter into disagreement. I mean, most of these guys will never share a stage with you because they will only share a stage with people who will agree with everything. So I knew when people won't even discuss it, that there's like a lot of people are in on this and nobody really wants to talk about it. And I've even had the other way when people have talked, of course it's like that. It's great, get involved. Get involved. Why are you not doing this? Come on, put some money in our new venture. I'm thinking, wow, this is going to go very wrong.
So being a unicorn right now is not important.
I don't think it's possible in Indonesia with any kind of seriousness. I don't think the market's big enough. People keep talking about the biggest market in the world. It's fifth biggest economy. It's when you start. I had this the other day with some guy, and he's a PhD or whatever. He keeps going about fifth biggest economy in the world, going to be the fourth. It doesn't matter unless your GDP per capita rises. Okay. You need a GDP per capita to rise to that to be really important. That's where the money's made, you know what I mean? Because you've got people who are going to pay for your product. Like B2C kind of works more in Japan because people are not just focused on the discount, right? Are not just focused on the promo. Yeah. So I think, if you're starting talking about a company that's not cooking the books, making hundreds of millions of revenue just in here, now it could happen with some of the companies in the non-tech space. Yeah. It could. Again, I don't know. And again, it also depends on how they get into the revenue numbers. Are they getting to their revenue numbers by paying for the revenue? Like's happened a lot. It's not important. It might be important for the investors. Of course, I would love to be a unicorn, but I just feasibly don't think I can do that. Well, I know I can't do it here alone. There's no way. I can't even do it here in Vietnam. I have to go to Japan and Korea to get to the revenue levels I need. And I've got to be, now, I guess my benefit was after my original partnership ended, I didn't have the family here or anything. So I always was focused on building a product that was not just usable here. Yeah. So a lot of the guys don't think about it until the time and just do it. But I always knew, and particularly Japan, I spent 12 years there, and my partners are Japanese. We have the access there, but only if the product's good. So that's what we've had to focus on. Yeah.
Okay. Now let's move to the other player, which is the VC, right? In a certain media outlet, you criticized investors who don't understand money, quote unquote, right? And in several LinkedIn posts, you even highlighted how junior associates in some VCs try to tell founders what to do and try to make deals, right? So first question. Does that mean young people should be banned to work for VC or
no? I
don't
think that right. So I struggle with the same situation. When I was a 22-year-old in Tokyo, right. I had to lie about my age. Yeah. So I first day at work, my boss said, "You're now 27." I said, "What?" He goes, "No one's taking investment advice of a 22-year-old mate." Okay. But of course, I was a junior and I knew I was a junior. I think what winds people on the VC space, And I don't know if you know Lee McKernan. He's a satirical guy, and he's absolutely brilliant. I had lunch with him on Sunday, but he writes some funny things. And he said,
the one with the t-shirt things?
He said, all VCs should have to wear a t-shirt that said, I am not a real investor.
I thought they were real news.
It's true though. Because the problem you've got is, some of these guys will approach somebody my age and they'll call you, and then and the way that they are, it's like, and they'll post on LinkedIn, hi guys, I've got $20 million to give away. Only contact me for this. And most of them, and the young ones, I've got a bit of I feel sorry for them because they've been put up to this by their bosses. But some of them have actually blown up previous businesses. Some of them have no track record apart from failure, and they post this stuff on LinkedIn and nobody pulls them on it. But now I've pulled them on it, I get so many, thank God you pulled him. I wish I'd pulled him. Because you've got a certain guy who's bankrupted a company claiming he sold it to someone, but I have a lot of inside data and I know what happened, right? And you're posting stuff like this on your social media and basically belittling founders, saying, if you want to talk to me, don't waste my time, blah, blah, blah. And then you get other people who are following him because they look up to him because he's a founder, apparently success, posting stuff, like they look about 22, 23, and they're posting this stuff. I've got money to give away. And I just think it's the wrong thing because all you're going to get there is young people who are looking up to you. You're not going to get serious players. No serious player is going to listen to this. Every serious player is going to go, what are you talking about? It's like, I used to work for a company and I used to invest hundreds of millions of dollars on the behalf of people, right? Yeah. I didn't claim I was the investor. I was a director at a family office. I was not an investor because I didn't have that money. And I wasn't going around posting on social media. I didn't have social media then because we don't really allowed it because you got to be careful what you say, right? I've only had that since I came here. It's just rubbing people up the wrong way, like telling experienced people, don't call me. And then that's why they always end up with the non-experienced people. I just think they all were on the Kool-Aid. They all went to these events. These guys came straight out of fancy universities. Often they came from very well-known families or they were part of the periphery of very well-known families, and they suddenly started posting crazy stuff. I just, how many of them have ever done proper transaction? How many of them have ever invested in a real company with their own money? I just think it was silly. It wasn't personal. Some of them it's personal about because particularly the older ones who just lied, and it can be picked up. My inbox is full of people going, that's not true. I work with them. That's not true. I work with them. People tell me I haven't got time because I'm not a whistleblower. But there's so much information out there that these people are kidding people. You know what I mean?
Is that because the pressure the senior partner is giving to the junior one, or
I think
it's just like a flexing culture?
I think Indonesia is a deferent culture, right? So I think people look up to the boss, and I think one of my old friends in the VC world, the people who work for him, it's like a cult. The people who work for him thinks he's the smartest guy in the world. And when I taught them, what has he done? Can you just explain to me? Number one, explain to me how he got the job, because I don't know anyone who could possibly get that job with that track record, with what he did previously. Outside this country, not possible. He's not super young, so how did that job happen? And number two, what has he done for you to think he's the smartest guy in the world? And I've come, but a lot of these guys I looked up to, if you go to these events, before they were cheered on. And I always used to wonder, go on then, give me one good story, and then I might respect. But again, they don't, even the big ones, the famous dudes, they will not enter into conversation with somebody who understands. They will avoid it like the frig. Yeah. They don't want you on the stage with them because they're scared of you. I've even had ministers not go on the stage with me because they don't want me to ask simple. I'm not looking for a fight, but I've not got deference. I guess I don't look up to people really. Even some of my friends, my partners in this business run like some of the biggest finances in Japan. It's, CEO Goldman Sachs, Japan, global head of equities at Nomura. They're my friends. So I'm used to dealing with people at a very high level in finance who are very nice people who did it themselves. So I struggle with all this delusion. And they know, and the thing is, these guys know that's my network. So they kind of less want to get into a conversation, right? That's the thing.
So this is not trying to get a free consultation, but if you were to consult a VC in revamping its operating model and policy, what would it look like in terms of criteria, process, governance?
I don't think it's just here, by the way. I think the VC playbook has been broken. I mean, look at Tiger Global. I mean, they lost nearly all their growth since the early 2000s in the last few years. I think in the old days, back in, in 90s, 80s, Compaq, Hewlett-Packard, all that was the early days of VC. There was a few players in there, Sequoia, Tiger, people like this.
It's not working anymore.
Well, in them days, there was far fewer people, far fewer ideas, and far fewer VCs. What's happened in the last 10 years, 15 years, is VC has now become, I never thought about working at VC. It was always, I don't know many VC people in Tokyo, Hong Kong, Singapore. It's all listed equities or private equity. It's not VC. But VC has become extremely popular now because everyone saw it a way of making quick money. And as has been a founder, especially if you're connected to the VC. And I believe from talking to people, US is not much different. So maybe I cannot just say Indonesia, I'm not exposed to the VC world. The difference in Indonesia is it's quite a small group of people. But I believe in Silicon Valley, it's probably similar, in that respect. But in the old days, these new companies, there was the growth was there and there was not that many players. But if you have 100 companies doing the same thing, you're not all going to get to that level of valuation. If you've got, there's too much competition for capital. There's too much competition for ideas. Everyone just wants to get money off VC, and there's too much capital involved because the trouble is the amounts invested are way too much. Again, this market. So I always see this example. My friend, he closed his Japanese equity long short fund at $1 billion. 2 times leverage, it's $2 billion. This guy has 28 years experience. He's one of the top performing Japanese hedge fund for years in a row, managed in-store money. He closed at $1 billion in one of the most liquid markets in the world. So why the heck does a couple of guys here with no investment background think they can run $1 billion in illiquid assets? It is impossible. And the only reason you've got all these guys is because they were the only people who could take that money. Because I can't take, I talk to some of the big boys here, like Provident and people, but I can't take the money they're offering me. It's too much. And they know that. We just keep up, we have a chat, right? I can't take $100 million tomorrow. It doesn't make sense. But if could, and that's where the problem is. The follow-on. People have got $1 billion. How do you allocate $1 billion? You can't write a $5 million check anymore, can you? You've got to write a $50 million check. Who can take $50 million? 10 companies. 5 of them have gone already. Oh, 2 of them have gone IPO disaster. But how many people could take the money? So the whole liquid. Why do these guys with zero financial experience believe they can run more than the biggest guys in Asia? The biggest guys in Asia. The guys I'm talking about are not just known in their country. They are the biggest. And they can't manage it.
So it's more of a gambling then?
I think VC is 100% gambling. I think in the last few years it's been gambling, yeah. And not just gambling, it's been gambling with friends, or the problem has been they had to keep going to the same guys to keep building up their investment. I was talking to who will remain nameless, but quite a well-known guy here who invested in the early. And it's like, even from now, it's like 70 times. But they brought him into the last one as well, so he's still under. But he said, I only invested that in the first one. But because I did all these, in the last round, just before IPO, I put in 100 times more money. And now I've lost the money I got in the first place. And that was the problem. It was all being, and I knew capital markets would deal with it. Anyone knew that capital markets was, because no one cares in capital markets who your dad is anymore. There's no slap, you can't slap it around, right? So it was always going to be a disaster in the IPO market, and anyone knows that. But yeah, I think it became a gamble because the amounts were too much. Who could take the amounts? Literally, who can take in Indonesia startup world even $20 million? I think it's quite hard. And realistically, it doesn't make sense. And how can you get the revenue to get that? Because we know that all these companies who've raised $65 million have never raised anywhere near that in revenue. So how has a company raised $60 million with probably less than $2 million revenue? We all know what we're talking about. I mean, how do they do it? This has got to be friends network. It cannot be based on anything but hockey stick projections and random ideas. You know what I mean? It's not rational. It is just, there's nothing rational about that kind of deal. And it's happened a lot. Because what's happened is some of these VCs here wanted to make a noise, get it up, hope it was going to work, and then bring the foreign investors in, bring Son in, bring Sequoia in. That was the model. Unfortunately, often these guys didn't even get product market fit before they started doing Series A, Series B, Series C. So that's why one of the reasons everyone wants to do B2C for starters is because B2C is very easy to say, I've got 400,000 users. Whereas if you've got B2B, you've got to list your clients on the website and they can be found out quite quickly if you're telling the truth or not, right? So yeah, it's just, I think, and in the B2B market, it takes time to establish the product. You know, when I started, it took me a long, long time to get my first client. It took me a year to get my first client, and our product was not so good then. And I'm very lucky I got Janji Jiwa and XXI. Shout out to them guys to give us a chance. Yes. And then we had, but many companies don't want to deal with tech startups from Indonesia. They said, tech cannot be in Indonesia. So while they all talk about VC model and all this talk about the market, most big Indonesian corporates, even the government, don't want to buy tech made in Indonesia. So it took me so long, 5 years, our business now growing quicker because we have distributor, Metrodata distributor now. Yeah. So now that we've proven ourselves. But unless you've got your own money, you can't do what I did. Unless you've got your own money and a group of friends, because no VC is interested in my model of doubling every year. I think the only way it's going to work is if more sensible numbers, you know, people have got to stop seeing this as moonshots. This 1 in 100, 1 in that is not going to work. I think you try to aim at, you know, when I started this, it was 1 in 1. I put my life savings into the business. Now I know you can't always do 1 in 1, but look at like 1 in 5 and do proper due diligence and work with these companies. You'll get a better return. Yeah. You get a better return. This 1 in 100 and 300x, it's just pie in the sky, and it's pie in the sky everywhere. But it's here, unfortunately, the market's still very, you know, I mean, we're still seeing like Wiz being bought by Google at 300, it's ridiculous, 30x, whatever. But we know it still happens. We know it still happens everywhere. And OpenAI is the biggest example of total nonsense. If you look at valuation and you look at NVIDIA and the circular economy, I believe it's a huge bubble. But the problem we've got here is, how do you reset? Because just investing in companies with lots of users and just like trying to front run everything is not working. So if you want to really grow a business, you've got to grow some moat. You've got to grow technology that not everybody has. And if you grow technology that not everyone has, it's going to take time. Because when I remember talking to the old guy, Pac Sosro, in the Mercantile Club, and he's like, "What's this all about? We already have like tea bottle all over the country. We don't need you." And he's like 80 something, right? That's the conversations I had when I came to Indonesia. And VCs ain't going to say, if I had a VC investor, they'd be knocking on my door, telling me to turn it into a B2C business or give it away for free so you got more users, and it would be a car crash. We'd have lost everything. Because we'd have been trying to chase the value, whereas the value will come. How many generational companies were built in 5 years? How many generational companies were built when the founders have left before IPO? None. Globally, none. So everything's been done wrong here if you look at the global playbook. Look at Jensen. No one had heard of him 3 years ago. He's been there 28 years. Does that happen here? No. The guy exits left because he knows what's going to happen next, starts a VC or goes into government. That's what usually happens here. Because government's a good excuse here. Globally, people like me have no interest in government. If my government my UK called me tomorrow and said, "Sir, we'd like you to come back and be the Prime Minister of England. We'll pay you $1 million a year." I was like, we're not interested in politics. Yeah. But here it's like, oh, good way to get it. We'll exit left now, exit from our problems. So no, I think it's got to be more long-termism, not this we just throw stuff at the wall and something will stick. Because unfortunately here, nothing's really stuck. And that's the problem you've got. When it goes wrong, your 100 to 1 goes wrong, you've got a real problem, you know?
Interesting. So we have several questions. This is a short question.
Okay, it's
quizzes, yeah, from the team here at MCI.
But, oh, good.
It should not be a hard answer for you. First would be about innovation. Martyn, we talk a lot about innovation. So which one do you prefer? Or imported innovation, or a homegrown innovation?
In respect of the people or in respect of the product?
The product. Replicate what already work in other country, or create from scratch and iterate until it works.
I think combining the two. I think you can't just copy and paste what's worked in other countries, because it's a very different economy. You know, cutting and paste what happened in Japan, for example, doesn't always work. You know, and that's always been the same with businesses as well. Right. I remember when all the big company like Walmart tried to open in Japan, when they didn't realize most people in Japan don't have cars, and they go to the small grocery store. So it's the same for everywhere. I think using products from overseas Or obviously most of the ideas, it's very rarely somebody brings a brand new idea, right?
Yeah.
So I think you're always learning from overseas and live there. But I think if you want to have IP, you've got to try to build it here. Yeah. The problem is Indonesia should have its own technology players. And I always come back to why does it not? It does not because of the rules. The protectionism around the big NVIDIA, Tesla, in my opinion, is a disaster for Indonesia because in Vietnam, they've got all these companies which are basically set up off the back of NVIDIA being there for that, Intel being there for 20 years. So people are ex-Intel. So then there's a lot of high quality development and then you've got FPT and all these guys that become global tech players. And also Vietnam has a lot of returnees. Now here, they don't have the returnees necessarily. The returnees are only the ones with the second name straight after university. Yeah. A lot of people don't know the first ever woman billionaire in VC is a woman from Indonesia, right? So, but of course that's not brought up here because there might be a clamor for her to come back and run the show because she's far more qualified than the people running the show. So this, I think, bringing ideas from overseas, nothing wrong with it, but don't just saying it'll work here. Because even my company, we try things that work in other countries, disaster. It doesn't always work. So you've got to have local nuances with everything. We're even finding out now in Vietnam and Japan, we thought we could just put everything in, still in local nuances. Still, I think the product can work in other countries, but there is still local nuances you've got to be aware of. But I think you've got to be willing. You can't just like bring a product from overseas and just like be a distributor. It's not, you've got no real value. You know, you've got to be able to build that product yourself and own the IP.
Okay, thank you, Martyn. So the question number 2 is about quality time with investor. Yeah. Would you prefer spend more time to discuss strategy, or would you prefer spend more time to introduce potential clients?
So from my perspective, my interest is usually when I talk to any kind of investor, if I do, it's more strategic. I'd rather not need any investment money and get money from clients. I mean, for me, it's a win for me. You know, when I'm looking at talking to investors, I'm also looking, right, if I close that deal with Apple before Christmas, I won't need them. You know what I mean? So I'm always working out. So for me, a strategic partnership where where somebody invests money and introduces us to people is far better for me. But it's got to be really possible. I've said again, a lot of the VCs, I know from experience or not from other people that some of the VCs have given money to people and not really supported them after that, right? Because they give money to so many people. Whereas in Japan, for example, my partner invested money into our company and he's given me a lot of meetings, a lot of opportunities. So yeah, I think strategy, again, I discuss the strategy with my existing partners a bit, but they're not on the ground here. Most of the strategy of BVT is discussed with my team. Like my deputy CEO, my CTO, because they know my head of sales. They know better than anybody else because they know more than me. They're the one every day talking to the client. So I think they are going to be more valuable than anybody else to give me advice. But from meeting the new clients, of course, it's very important.
Third one is your dream growth path: IPO or strategic M&A.
I think it would be IPO from my perspective, but again, unfortunately, it wouldn't be here, right?
All right.
No, I mean, I would try to build to a proper size and probably do NASDAQ. Okay. I've got nothing against Japan, but Japan has a quite different valuation process with tech companies, so it's not quite as strict because most of the tech companies there are older and stuff, so they're not as growth. So SAS companies are valued nowhere near as much in Japan as they are on the NASDAQ, for example. I mean, again, open to everything. I just think it would allow us to keep shares in the company. Sometimes VCs get really annoyed. A few weeks ago, I had an event in Singapore and some VCs come and they go, "What's your exit strategy?" And my first answer is, I don't get up every morning thinking how to sell my company. And that's another problem for VCs because they're like, but of course I would maintain shares even after IPO in this business because I don't need not to. And I'm not planning to be a 5 times. I'll never do this again. I'm never planning to. So I think the IPO for me, but again, also it helps that I've got the connections in that sector. I can call like the Goldman Sachs guys like directly. So I can get a much more inkling from people I know what they're doing because they've been doing it for 20 years. So I think that's where I have more, but there's nothing against the other thing, but yeah.
The last one, what irritates you the most? should be interesting. Founders going to too much speaking panel sessions, or junior VC associate telling you what to do?
It doesn't really anger me. It's not that. It's just I think the problem is when if you're doing well. Even I speak on panels a bit, and I also think there's nothing wrong with some panels, but sometimes it's like total glorification. No one's achieved anything yet, right? It's a lot of it's backslapping, and the questions are like asked by friends of them and stuff like that. It's actually let's get this right. My biggest problem is not with junior associates. Actually, if people look back at who I've had beef with. The beef is with the CEO of the company. Yes. So I've had disagreements with the CEOs of some of the major VCs, not the juniors. The juniors, I just think they're copying. And sometimes I just think it's silly. And again, the founders, a lot of them are, of course they've got to make the business sound good. It's a sales thing. I mean, even when things are not going good for me, I've got to get up in front of people and pretend it's good. Every day of the week's not good. Yeah. I've had weeks when I've just thought, what am I doing? It's not been paid on time. I'm quite relaxed today. I've got enough money to pay salaries. But sometimes, I get the salary and I'm like, where's the money? And they go, well, they haven't paid yet. Because B2B is another challenge. Collecting money is a challenge. That's another reason people don't want to be involved with it. And I get it. I sometimes have like breakdown. I'm thinking, I'm owed how much money? We're often owed 7 figures US. And it's just, that's the way it is. So yeah, you got me on a good day because it's payday tomorrow, and I checked earlier. We can survive another month.
Yeah, I remember you post one time about not sacrificing your price. Yeah. Every time you sales, your sales team want to pitch to a company, never sacrifice your.
Well, we've got. I'll be honest with you. We have our business is, we cannot, because the problem is. One of our suppliers recently said to me, one of our distributors recently said to me that in Indonesia, you've got to give 3 months for free. And I said, mate, if there's no buy-in once you give stuff for free, there's no buy-in. And I said, honestly speaking, I've never given anything for free. Yeah. And he said, really? I said, never. And he goes, I know your clients. I said, yeah, but that's because the way you sell it. I make it clear at the first meeting. There is no chance. And if that's what you want, I walk away now. Because once people have got something for free, generally in the history of the world, they're very unlikely to suddenly start paying full price at the end of it. It's something that I have never seen work in my career, because once it comes to the full price, people go, oh, come on, we have another 3 months, or can we have a discount? We think it's a good product, but we don't want to pay full. So yeah, and I also tried to lock people 3 and 5 year contracts. Yes. I actually saw another point, coming back to what you said before about importing innovation, right? Because I saw on the tour before. I think one of the things I've said in the past, which has really annoyed people, and it's not meaning to annoy people. Look at when you talk about importing. I think there needs to be importing of people with either returnees, but the returnees don't want to come because they don't want to be told what to do by certain people. Yeah. That's the problem, right? I know some senior guys in finance; they don't be told what to do. But I do think there is, and this upsets people, but there is a requirement in some respects to import certain, and not people like Tony Blair, which is import. Look at Vietnam. Some of the guys running the big VC in private equity, they're big time bankers, Australian, Brits. And the idea is not take over. The idea is what happened in Japan. In Japan in the 1990s, the Japanese guys, they were a huge market, but they weren't necessarily good at doing deals. So they brought in a lot of Americans, a lot of Brits, Aussies, and they basically showed them how to do it, as in make money in a different way. And if you look back now, I was at the back end of that, right? And what's happened now? All that's gone through the cycle, and now you've got a lot of the top guys in Nomura before, they were actually foreigners in one respect. Now they're all Japanese again. You know what I mean? So it's a cycle, because if you're in a market, if you've got guys running a venture capital fund here, like in the past, who not really in the banking sector, right? And they were in different sector, and they suddenly, of course, it's better to bring somebody who's got 20 years experience running money. And if you get somebody 20, I'm not a genius hedge fund manager or something, but everything I've said was going to happen has happened. So maybe they need somebody who has experience, I know if you hired a guy like, some of these guys who run funds in Vietnam, there wouldn't be the same problems, because they would say straight away, no, you're not investing in your friend. No, that's nonsense. And but I think that's about you bring in those people to run, and then those people upskill. And it's the same argument for bringing Apple here, bringing NVIDIA here. There's so much pushback them coming to the country, taking jobs. They're creating jobs you don't have at the moment. They're lifting GDP. The GDP at the moment, 5,000, less than 5,000. But if you upskill all those people from all these big companies and you actually start building EVs here properly, think about the opportunity, think about the upskilling. But the problem is there's all this competition. Oh, if you want to come into Indonesia, you've got to give a share to us and a share to them. They're not interested. So they go to Malaysia. How is Malaysia attracting more FDI than here as per capita? It shouldn't be. But it is because they make everything complicated. And it's the same as like, we don't need foreigners to run our businesses, right? But if you look around, that's what happens. Professional people are often hired in an area where where there's no experience. Look at Hong Kong. Often the guys on the boards, even Sun Hung Kai, they're bully. They're bully with a huge amount of experience. It doesn't mean keep them there forever, but the fact that there's nobody pushing back in this room where it's just a bunch of people with very limited experience and all saying, oh, we can do this, we can do this. Yeah, I think it's normal. If you look at how places like Dubai were built and Abu Dhabi were built, they brought a lot of foreigners in to help the construction. Yeah. It's not a dirty word. But people say, oh, you think you're better, you think you're clever. No, I'm sure I could have made a better job than some of them because I just could work out the numbers won't work. And I think bringing in professionals on the investment side, some from overseas, like they have in Vietnam, even in Thailand, they bring some from the investment side, and then through that, people learn from those guys, not learning from the guys who are all in prison now. Yeah. You know what I mean? This is you need to learn from the people. There's no point in learning from a guy who just constantly says, oh yeah, it's great, because it was just purely speculation. Whereas if you got a guy like me who's done 20 years in finance, and I'm not the guy, by the way, because I'm not qualified. I know I'm not qualified to be a VC manager, and I'm not one. But I know there's a lot of people who've run hedge funds and run private equity, I know, would certainly have put the stop on a lot of these investments and said, hang on a minute, how are you going to raise that much money with how do you know these people? And that's your friend, and that's your cousin, and that's your, I mean, we know there's been investments here in wives' companies and all sorts. I mean, we all know the investments, like valuation based on he invested in, it's his wife's company and it's his dad's building. And I mean, it's, some foreigners going to look at that and go, what? So yeah, I think there's I do think hiring some people from overseas to oversee some of it, and then these people learning from them. Because if you're learning from people, I mean, you're a new guy into this business, and you're not on the Kool-Aid as much. That's why we're talking. But the Kool-Aid's been a problem. Because if you join as a junior to work for some of these startups, and you've got your guy, your boss, telling everyone that every business he does makes money, and that's what they were doing, which was absolutely, if anyone who understood, was not true. That's not going to teach these guys the right way to be. The guys who are just starting out in the VC world in Indonesia to make a better market need to learn from people who are not just being positive about everything. Because people say I'm negative about everything. I'm not. I'm positive about Indonesia as a growth story, but it needs to be managed a lot better than it has. And it needs to be managed by people who understand and professional, not just by a group of people it became like crypto. It just became like crypto. Everyone talks and pushes it up.
But do you think a lot of foreigner would be interested in like resetting the industry here, working?
I think there'd be some interest from but the problem is who's going to oversee them. You know, the problem is a lot of these people, we don't have deference to politics. No. We don't have deference to politicians. We don't care. You know, if you ever see me talking to like these Sandian people, you'd be like, really? We just see them as individuals. We see being a politician the same as being a banker. We don't. So whether the people are willing necessarily to be told what to do by certain people, I think that's the challenge. Yeah. And especially now you've got your bosses, Dan and Tara, taking shares in things and involved. It's challenging for foreigners because foreigners don't want to be involved with government necessarily. Foreigners want to be separate to government, you know.
Yeah. This is a question for what should we do for tomorrow and for the better day. Of course, in financial industry, frauds, market manipulations are not something new, right? We have seen worse in financial industry, in banking.
Absolutely.
And regulation and after regulation have been imposed, and still new variant of frauds is happening. Yeah. That's why we have Basel I, Basel II, Basel III, Basel IV in banking, right?
Yeah.
So in this in our ecosystem in VC worlds, do you think it should be more regulations or more punishment, or what need to be done in Indonesia particularly?
So some of it's difficult to me work out.
Right.
Because I'll give you an example. There's no way in the world, and anyone can take me on this. I'd have been in prison by now if I was lying, because somebody done me for fraud. Sorry, fraud. For somebody done me for whatever you call it, when you say things you shouldn't say. There's no way in the world that some of the investors didn't know that was going on. No way. So it's very easy to work that out yourself, because I remember sat down with William Chiputra in their building over there, and we were laughing at the numbers because they were claiming to make more than his group, which have like hospitals and all. And that was 2 years before it all went wrong. So I think the problem has been obviousness. Okay. The fact that certain people like me have been saying, watch this go, and it's happened is the problem. So I think the obviousness of it and the fact it's been too in your face. There's always going to be these things happening, right? Yeah. And I think too many people were involved, and it was more a case of they didn't really feel like it was fraud. Everyone was doing it. Yeah, we've got to get these numbers up, and we've got to sell to foreigners. Yeah. That was the concept it seemed to be. And to get a unicorn, you need hundreds of millions of revenue. And was that really ever possible in Indonesia? So how are we going to do it? So I think it became a way of life rather than just a few mistakes. I think everybody felt that they couldn't get on without it.
And that needs to be stopped, right?
I think that needs to be stopped. Well, you'll never stop fraud, but when people are like me are building a business which is only going double every year or whatever, and you sat there going, I made 20 times last year. I'm thinking, I'm doing something wrong. I need to get involved with this. And luckily I knew it's not true because I'm not stupid and I've worked for years, but a lot of people believed it. And a lot of people thought, how do I get to where they are? And then the VCs were saying, you've got to do 10, 20 times, as you say, right? And it just became like, everyone was blowing it up. In Indonesia at that time, where the money was flowing, so everybody thought it was always like when the chairs stop, everyone's dead. Right. And then when the interest rates went up, and again, everybody knows in the real world the interest rates are cyclical. So blaming interest rates because you got caught with your pants down doesn't work, So I think there's always going to be regulation. VC is going to have less regulation because it needs to move quickly, right? We know that. Correct. We know that. It's never going to have the same regulations or the stuff. There's always risk with venture capital investment. But when it seems to be the whole market or a group of people are moving in a certain direction, I think that was what stood out to me. If you ever said anything against it, you were a negative person, you hate our country. And I was like, no, I just think it's mad. So I think there was too much. If you ever set out against it, you were pushed back. Right. No one wanted didn't want to talk to me. It was all a big bubble. Backslapping, and I think that's got to change. There's got to be room for critical thought. Yeah. If you don't agree, you should not be called Dr. Doom because you don't agree. You know what I mean?
Agree. So this is the last clarification, Martyn. Is it true that you are avoiding VC money, or is it more of a general opinion, or if there's a VC approaching you, what kind of criteria would you accept?
First of all, it's never the case that. It's just that luckily I didn't need it at first. And then I talked to a few of the guys, and the guys, I didn't really think I would want them on my board, to be honest, because one of the guys on my board is like the biggest financer in Japan, and he's not going to take it. Okay. So I thought that the people involved that I've talked to in the past would be a problem. So that was one of the reasons. Also, I was told clearly that the growth numbers they wanted, I could never achieve. There's no chance in B2B software of achieving it. So that was it. No, I've actually got no problems with it as long as it's, maybe I'm a bit different. I'm older. I have certain resources myself. So it's unlikely I'm going to turn up and beg people. So it's got to be more of a team effort. I mean, there's always challenges, right? Just interesting, talking about you guys as well. How is it impacted who you're owned by now? Things like that, right? Things like this. Yeah. Most founders won't care. They'll take your money. Yeah. But I will look at political exposure of the people involved, because I've already been involved before with political exposure, and I know that's a real problem for some Japanese family office and some Japanese bank. So I'm not just in a business like I need your money. Of course, I'm expanding. I am working with some partners that potentially invest at the moment, but we got to be careful because we built this business. The business works. I could just keep this business in Indonesia now, to be honest, and take dividend. I'll be okay. But I want to take this business to other countries. That's where the challenge is, right? But you've got to be careful if you're doing that, and if you're going to talk to international players like Goldman's and people like that who I have a very strong relationship with. you've got to be careful what the political thing is. Now, Mandiri itself is BUMN, for example. But how much involvement do the people who now run that? There's all these challenges that I think I would ask that most other investors wouldn't. Most of the founders wouldn't. Most of the founders like, $10 million, give it to me. Whereas I'd be thinking, right, I can probably get $10 million at some point anyway. I need to make sure this is beneficial for the business, not today, not tomorrow, but for the next 10 years. Because I have a long-term outlook. Because I realize the only way to make a generational company is commit to it for the long term. You know, there's a big difference in BVT. I've put millions of dollars of my own money and I don't take a salary. So no secondary market sales. So it's a different game. So not true I don't want to talk to VC investors. The people I've met before was not people I'd want to do business with, just because we had different opinion. And, you know, I couldn't do with it. I'd taken advice of somebody who has far less experience. I could on some respects, but some of them were too blasé with, you know, that's the problem. I think it's difficult. We're very old, right? Me and my partners, I'm the youngest, and we're all like 48 to 58. So it's quite different, you know. It's quite different. But no, nothing against it. I'm talking to some family offices at the moment. I'm talking to some big groups. Again, the problem with the private equity, they want to write stupid ticket size. So I'm just trying to say, right, this is what I need to do this. You know, why don't we just, or even if you want to structure this as a loan or, you know, as a coupon, whatever you want to do, you know, I can't take $50 million today. It's, again, my plan was always to maintain the equity in the business, actually. You know, I've sold no secondary market shares since we started. I own over 65% of the company still. It's a different model. It's you know, trying to actually make a business, you know. But I think also the good thing about, since you came to my office, I think VCs are changing, right? VCs are hiring experienced people with a more banking background who are a bit more like, well, so there's a reset, right? There's a reset because there's been too many problems, you know.
Thank you, Martyn. So with that, I think we have to conclude the session, but I think some of the great discussion, the message here why we invite Martyn to our office is, let's start open discussion.
Not just to cause trouble.
Not just cause trouble. Yeah, a lot of critics out there is meant to be for the good of the industry.
I think that what people don't understand is, if Indonesia's market is better, it's better for me.
Yes.
I have 150 people working for me, right? So there's no benefit, but I see it being damaged really badly. And I see, talking to Singapore and Japan, the reputation is not good now because of this. And it's only because of the behavior of a few people.
Right.
And that's what's annoying. As you said, lots of innovation out there, but that needs to come to the forefront, you know?
Yes. You're quite the contradictory, actually. Most of the Indonesian founders set their company in Singapore, but you're a foreigner founder set the company in Indonesia.
And I've only gone the other way now, because from the investment perspective, yeah, we did it because we always wanted to be the local Indonesian company. And I'll be honest with you, the frustrations also come. We were promised all sorts of help from the government if we stayed here, and we did, and it just didn't come forward, you know. So I have to be in Singapore now because I need to fit. I'm doing regional contracts with big companies, so that's the only reason. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Martyn. Thank you for the discussion, everyone, our audience in the Coffee and Capital. I hope this will bring more discussion, just not like you mentioned frequently, what do you call that, echo chamber, right? Yeah. We keep hearing what we want to hear, but through this discussion, we hear what I think we would not want to hear in the beginning. So I hope this bring a lot of discussion out there from both sides, from the VC, founders, and all the industries. And I hope you enjoy the discussion with Martyn Terpilowski.
Thank you.
Round of applause. Thank you, Martyn. Thank you for the session. Man. Thank you.
Cheers.
Enjoy. Thank you.